Short story, with few characters and no continuation. So if you decide to read on, please don't complain about it. No graphic sex. You have been warned. Just a small window into the lives of a couple and how one guy decided to deal with a problem he was having. Please read on. Please enjoy. You okay, Bill? And it was my best friend Joe who inquired about my well-being, and deep down, I knew he had his reasons. I just wasn't ready to talk about it yet, not even with him. Yeah, Joe, there's nothing wrong with me. Just maybe a little tired. Are you sure, Bill? He continued with a concerned look. You've been acting out lately, and it seems like you're having bad luck all the time. I'm all right. Nothing wrong with me, Joe, that a few pints wouldn't fix? With those words, I beckoned to the landlord and ordered 2 more pints of foaming ale. My problem could wait until another time, especially as the Arsenal match was just starting on the TV in the pub, and my mates from work were starting to come over to watch the game. After a couple of hours and a few pints of beer, the Gooners scored 5 goals against the Aston Villa goalkeeper, and my worries were forgotten for the rest of the evening. Not forgotten, you understand. Just put aside. It was the following Thursday evening, and Joe and I were having another pint of beer in another pub near the equipment hire firm where we both worked as mechanics. We'd been friends since our school days and had interned together, so it seemed natural that we'd ended up next to each other after 16 years. You still seem low, mate, he began again before we had had our first pint. It's not like you, Bill. Not like you at all. It's nothing, Joe. I waved him off. Come on, Bill, he continued to press me. You're not sick or anything, are you? No, nothing like that, Joe, I assured him. Physically, I'm quite healthy. Then you've got a problem, Bill. Do you? It's not that I have a problem, Joe, I began frankly. It's more like I'm worried I might have a problem. Damn it, buddy, he smiled at me. Deeply thoughtful of all this for guys like us. Are you sure you're not worrying about nothing? Probably, I agreed. But I finished with a sigh. Come on, Bill. I can't help you if you won't talk to me about it. We're best friends after all. Okay. I gave up, raising my hands in defeat. I guess I need to talk to someone or I'm going to go crazy. So what's the problem? Pressed Joe. Jean. Oh no, she's not sick or anything, is she? Retorted Joe, who had known my wife about as long as I had. In fact, we were together when I first met her 9 years ago. I ended up staying with a pretty slim blonde with nice legs, and Joe got together with her friend with rather odd red hair and huge breasts. Joe fell in love with her and left her as she was, changing his women almost as often as he changed shirts at the time. But not me. I courted Jean for almost 2 years, stealing her virginity along the way, and eventually married her. Joe was best man, of course, and on the same day he dragged Anne, one of the bridesmaids, to him, fell head over heels in love with her, and a year later I returned the favor myself at the same local church. Crafty devil that Joe is, and the fact that Anne, while undoubtedly pretty, came from a wealthy family by our meager standards may have had nothing to do with his earlier-than-expected domestication. So here it is, a potted history. No, she's not sick or anything, Joe, I continued. Honestly, I don't know how to say it. It sounds so implausible. Try it, buddy, Joe encouraged me. I crinkled my face. Talking about it wasn't easy, but I knew it had to be done. I think Jean might be... Well, you know, Joe. I have no idea, buddy, he retorted. What could it be? Well, you know, I muttered, pouring myself a pint of beer. That she's pregnant? Suggested Joe erroneously. No, for heaven's sake, I wheezed. That's not the point, Joe. She's doing something. Doing what, Bill? He demanded. What the fuck are you talking about, buddy? Walking out on me, I said as delicately as I could. Out, Bill. Joe looked at me with an awkward expression on his face. You mean she's playing on the field, playing away from home, cheating on you? I'm not sure, Joe, I continued. I don't have any proof, and she hasn't become less loving or anything, but that's half the problem. How can that be a problem, Bill? Well, it's like she's trying too hard all the time, almost trying to act loving and normal. She refuses to argue, and she's never been like that before. Never refuses sex when I suggest it, and that's certainly not normal. I think you're jumping to conclusions, Bill, Joe advised me. There could be all sorts of reasons. I know, Joe, I agreed, but I just have a suspicion, and it won't go away. Jesus, that's a tough one, Bill. Have you tried talking to her? Tried. Well, sort of. But Jean just changes the subject. The two of us sat together, sipping a pint of beer, each thinking about something different. I knew a little more than I was admitting, but even in front of Joe, I wasn't ready to open up that much yet. What are you going to do, mate? Asked Joe demandingly. I don't know, I admitted. If I thought it was just a little fling or something, a one-time thing, then I could, and I mean could, learn to live with it. But I couldn't let her find out that I knew, and she'd have to stop it herself, and not just because I confronted her. Maybe she'll stop Bill, Joe put in. If, of course, she does anything at all. That's my problem, Joe, I admitted. How the hell am I supposed to warn her to stop without her finding out I know about it? No idea, Bill. No idea. Do you think Anne could talk to her? I asked. You know, scare her a little. Tell her she thinks like I'm getting suspicious. Geez, buddy, I doubt that. Those two are thick as thieves. I didn't say anything, but that was about the answer I expected. How about you, Joe? Ventured I. Would you mind having a word with Jean? You know it's a regular thing. Damn it, Bill. What would I say? How would I even bring it up? You could say you're worried about me. Ask her if everything's okay with our marriage, that sort of thing. You know, just put worrying thoughts in her head. Maybe get her to come to her senses. Well, maybe I could do that, Bill. Joe began to concede. God knows what I'd say, but I could try. Thanks, buddy. You're a real friend. I smiled at him. I already feel a little better knowing you're willing to help me out. How about another pint? That's all right. That's my round, Joe replied, getting up to refill our glasses. When can I do it, Bill? He asked me when he returned. I'll have to bring Jean in myself, and that might be difficult, won't I? Now that's what I mean. He wasn't going to get away with it that easily. Well, you're coming over Saturday afternoon to watch the match, aren't you? Of course, he grinned. Arsenal versus Man U. It could be terrific. Well, I can make sure I'm not there when you get there. Make up some reason why I have to be away for an hour or two. You could even come a little early and Jean wouldn't suspect a thing. That might work, Joe finally agreed. Next Saturday, right? Yeah, I confirmed. I'll make sure I'm gone for an hour or more. That should be enough, shouldn't it? I think so, my buddy replied uncertainly, and it was clear by the look on his face that he wasn't in the least bit eager for a confrontation. But that's what buddies are for, isn't it? The following Saturday, I waited impatiently for the clock to strike. Jean strutted around in tight jeans and a t-shirt, her beautiful, slender, taut body and firm breasts a constant reminder of what I could lose. The night before, she'd nearly knocked the life out of me, and we'd only been up for a couple hours. Is Joe coming to the match? Asked Jean. Yes, I replied. He'll be here in half an hour or so. What a bunch of you men, Jean grinned, shrugging her shoulders. All you guys think about is soccer. The shrug made her small but full breasts shake and ripple, and she laughed, realizing she'd caught my attention. And about that too, of course, she giggled. Football and boobs. Football and boobs. Damn, man. We both laughed out loud. Who's that? I asked, pulling my cell phone out of my pocket. With the advent of the silent phone vibrator, I didn't even have to pretend to call. Oh, hell no, I mumbled into the discharged phone. Not on a Saturday afternoon. I pretended to listen to what I was being told on the phone, and Jean's attention snapped back to me for a moment. Okay, I spoke into the dead mouthpiece again. I know it needs to be done, and I'll be there in about 20 minutes. What's wrong, honey? Asked Jean. Was it work? Yes. I nodded at her. The JCB broke down on one of the sites. It's easy to fix, but I'll have to leave. But you'll miss the match, Bill. My wife was so concerned. Just the beginning, I assured her. I'll be back in less than a couple hours, so I should be able to catch at least the second half. What about Joe? Oh, he'll be here in 20 minutes or so, Jean, I told her, and my plan fell into place. With any luck, by late afternoon, my marital problems might be solved. Give him a beer and tell him I'll see him a little later. Okay, honey. My wife smiled lovingly at me. Hurry back. I kissed her, and she kissed me back enthusiastically, making me wonder if all my suspicions were false. I really hoped so. I slipped noisily out of the house, reminding my wife to keep an eye on Joe and make sure he didn't run out of beer. Jumping into the car, I sped confidently down our driveway towards the place in question. To the one I had in mind, of course. I turned around and parked right behind my house, the cute little house we've been renting for the last 4 or 5 years or so. I got out of the car, walked through the garden, and back into the house through the back door, unable to hide a smile when I heard my gorgeous wife Jean singing along to a tune playing on the TV. Believe me, and I wanted to hear how Joe handled this problem. Once up on the second floor, I quietly slipped out into the hallway and then into the mezzanine overlooking the living room and made sure my digital camera was still in my pocket. I waited, but not for long. The doorbell rang and Jean jumped to her feet with a smile on her face and disappeared down the hallway. Why she and Joe took so long to return to the living room, I don't know, nor would I want to speculate about it. However, when they reappeared, my best friend Joe had his arm around my wife's waist. Well, that's just great. What do you mean Bill suspects something? My loving wife said to my best friend, obviously continuing a conversation whose beginning I had missed. We'll really have to cool it, Jean, Joe replied, sliding his hand from her waist upward to her breasts. But he can't suspect Joe, Jean continued. I've been so careful and acted perfectly normal. That's the problem, Jean. Bill's no fool, you know that. But I've never turned him down for sex. We sleep together more often now than we have in years, she protested. You two are wearing me the hell out. Trust me, Jean suspects. And if we keep sleeping with each other twice a week like we have for the last 6 months, we'll get caught. But how will he catch us? Objected Jean. We've gotten away with it so far, and neither Bill nor Anne has a clue about it. I wouldn't be so sure of that, Jean, Joe objected. I'm sure Anne has no idea about anything, but Bill smells a rat. Oh my God, Joe, my wife said to him, the apple of her eye. I don't know if I can live without you, honey. I love Bill. I really do, but the way you love me. How much time, Jean? How much time do we have? Here we go, I thought with a smile on my face. If I'd planned it all out, everything would have worked out just fine, but, of course, that's exactly what I did, isn't it? I watched in disgust as Joe undressed my wife, exposing her naked except for her high-heeled shoes. At least he had taste. God, she looked great, she really did. Of course I would miss her, but I had known that for a long time. I have to say, watching Joe undress wasn't so appealing anymore. No, not at all. I clicked the digital camera, congratulating myself that I'd managed to cheat a little. Of course, I'd known for weeks what this couple was up to, ever since Joe's wife Anne had informed me of their relationship. But how to catch them? That was the question. Neither of us had ever managed to catch them doing this activity, and here and now, with a little trickery, they were having fun, and I was clicking my camera, albeit with less pleasure. Anne and I had talked about hiring a private investigator, but people like me don't do that. Christ, I was just a mechanic in a factory and couldn't afford anything like that. But luckily they provided me with all the evidence I could possibly need. Great job. But then it got even better. They disappeared into a downstairs bedroom, very considerate of my wife to use the spare room. Nice to think she didn't fuck him in our marital bed. Thank you, Jean, darling. Sneaking down the stairs, I gathered up Joe's clothes and put them in the trash, then called Anne, who had been expecting my call, and told her the happy news of our unexpected bonus. I waited. About 10 minutes, just long enough for them to get in the car and for Anne to arrive in her car. "Hi, Jean," I announced into my cell phone when she answered my call, a little out of breath. "It was easier than I thought, and I'm on my way home." "Take your time, dear," she exclaimed in a panic. "I don't think the match has started yet." "Never mind," I replied. "I'm only 10 minutes away. Ask Joe to pour me a beer, will you?" "Beer?" "Yeah, beer, honey. Is that such a problem?" I could imagine the panic and confusion. Then they both trudged back into the living room below me, Jean grabbing her clothes and struggling to fit into them, and poor Joe thrashing around the room in panic, naked as a jaybird as he desperately searched for his. "Where the hell are my clothes?" he shouted at Jean. "What the hell did you do with them, you stupid cow?" "Don't call me a stupid cow, you idiot," she shouted back at him, pulling her panties up. "I didn't take them off." "What am I supposed to do?" exclaimed Joe irritably. "It's all your damn fault. He can't catch me looking like this." "Use your brains, you miserable idiot," replied Jean, also losing her temper and pulling her t-shirt over her head. "Go find some of Bill's stuff to wear." "Have you got your brains blown out?" raged Joe. "Are your brains out of whack? I weigh 6 pounds more than Bill, so why the hell would I fit in his stuff?" Right, I thought to myself. Joe may have more than I do, but he's put on a lot of weight in the last few years. "Well, then you shouldn't be such a fat bastard," Jean replied, struggling to pull on her super tight jeans. "You almost kill me when you end up on top of me." Smirking, I walked out of the house and headed for the front door, leaving them to argue, calling each other every name under the sun and one or two that probably weren't. "Hi, honey," I greeted her, noticing that Joe had disappeared into the spare bedroom, no doubt having heard me open the front door. "Where's Joe?" "He's not here," Jean stated in desperation, tucking her t-shirt into her jeans, the fact that it was buttoned in the front not escaping her attention. "But his car is still outside, Jean," I remarked. "Well, he was here, but he had to jump out." "Pop out?" "Pop out." "Pop out for what?" "Beer," Jean muttered. "That's right, honey. We needed more beer." "But we have gallons of the damn stuff, honey," I teased her excitedly. "No, it wasn't beer," she stammered, her face reddening. It was, he went for, maybe for clothes," I ventured. "Clothes," she repeated, almost choking on the words. "Yes, clothes, Jean," I repeated. "I think poor Joe is going to need clothes." Jean made a strangled sound I couldn't make out. "Where is he, Jean?" I demanded with a victorious grin. "Where's the bastard?" "The guy who was supposed to be my best friend." She just stood there, shaking her head, not knowing what to say or do. "Never mind, honey," I continued. "Look, here comes Anne with clothes for him." "Anne?" whispered Jean nervously. "What's she doing here? Why is she bringing clothes for Joe?" "Not just clothes, honey," I informed my cheating wife. The whole damn pile, and she's going to throw it out on the front lawn in the next few minutes." She didn't understand, the poor stupid cow. I had to explain that Anne had arrived with all of Joe's clothes and closest belongings, and that as of this moment he was no longer living in their rather nice house. "But where will he live, dear?" Silly bleating question. "Well, he'll live here, I think, Jean," I told her. "You'll need someone else to help pay the rent." But, what about you?" "Oh, I'm going to go live with Anna," I told her. "I don't know if it'll work out, but tomorrow when I spend the night having sex with her, I'll have a better idea." "Oh, no!" exclaimed Jean. "Oh, yes," objected I. "And you can sleep with Joe as much as you want." "But he snores, Bill," Jean complained. "He's overweight and he smells like body odor half the time, too." "Well, isn't that strange, Jean?" I told her with pleasure. That's exactly what Anne told me. "But I don't love him, Bill," Jean exclaimed tearfully. "I love you." "Well, here comes another coincidence, Jean," I informed her. "I loved you once, too." But I'm sorry, Jean. I cut her short. There's a hot woman waiting for me. And with that, I walked away from her, having already packed my things into my new life and the new life of my former best friend.